Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and let's just jump right into this video. It's a long one. I had a lot of fun and I'm just laughing at myself because, yeah, a more recent video I was saying like, oh, I kept things simple. It's so nice to be simple sometimes. And then this one I used like 500 products. So anyway, using the Distress Oxide sprays that I just showed in my last haul video. They were sitting on my desk. I've been dying to open them up and play. So that's what I did. I have a box here. This is just one of the Simon Says Stamp card kit boxes. I like keeping a few of these on hand for things like this. Anything I want to do that's kind of extra messy, these come in super handy. So I have distressed watercolor paper, just the 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch piece. And I just stuck it in here. With these sprays, I honestly don't think it matters what type of paper you use. Like, you'll get different effects depending on like the thickness of the paper and the color. That is another thing. You can use these on darker cardstock because they have a pigment. But I was just wanting to use the watercolor paper because this can obviously handle a fair bit, and I was planning on being pretty heavy-handed. So for the first piece, I'm just kind of spraying it, seeing how it feels. Spraying the colors. I already knew what I was going to do. Like, I knew I was going to die cut this one. I was kind of thinking like almost seaweed sort of an idea. So that's why I chose these 3 colors. So I started with the fossilized amber, and then I used cracked pistachio, and then I'm adding some peeled paint. And pretty heavy and liberal. A thing to note with the Distress Oxide sprays, it is recommended you shake them side to side, not up and down, because you don't want the pigment to get up into the nozzle of the sprayer and clog it. So you just kind of shake them like a bell, kind of, you know, a little bit handheld or a bell with a handle. That's how you shake them. And because these are water reactive, the fun thing with these is you can add water, you can add more spray. Like, every time it's going to turn out different. I need more playtime because this is just like, I enjoyed the mess I was making with these. So I sped up the drying process and dried it. And again, because these are oxides, like it's a pigment in here, they dry back very soft, kind of chalky looking, which I knew to expect that. So that's, again, which would make these look really fun on darker cardstocks. So I'm just, the wheels are turning. So I dried it with my little Ranger heat tool. And then I took the nozzle out of the peeled paint and just like kind of spackled it on the background a little bit. Started to dry it a bit, didn't worry about it too much. And then now I'm just adding like just plain water. Nothing fancy. You can keep adding to this if you want. It's just, I can't explain it. They're fun to play with. So to remove some of the excess water and to get that effect, I'm actually just using this, this is a flour sack cloth. This is just plain cotton cloth. I bought this a while ago. They're really cheap and it's huge. And I don't use it very often because actually I haven't used it all till now because it is so big, but it's really neat and it's good for like cleanup. Like Tim Holtz uses these all the time. And I was like, why don't I just start using this to pick up, excess ink when I'm doing, ink smushing and all that stuff. And then that cloth is amazing because then you can just wash it and reuse it over and over again. So that's nice. So I'm not wasting a ton of paper towel. And 2, apparently it gets better the more you use it and wash it. It just starts getting more absorbent, etc. So I'm trying to make a point, even though it literally is huge, although you probably could cut it down if you want. But yeah, I'll have a link to it with the supplies. So I played around with the first background and then set that aside to let it completely dry. My second one is, more bright, fun colors. This one I'm thinking like a water, like actual water. So I used Wilted Violet, which is just gorgeous in the spray. And then Faded Jeans, which is it's very Faded Jeans, I guess. It's just a really nice, like deep, subdued blue. And then the Mermaid Lagoon, which is like the most gorgeous color. I think that's one of my favorites. So sprayed those and same thing. Dried it with the Ranger heat tool and you can just see how the color just, like basically the dye ink of the spray soaks into the paper and then that chalk pigment, like not chalk pigment, but the pigment sits on top and gives it that like chalky sort of look. Like, just fun. So I did the exact same thing. I am just kind of splattering on the colors, like taking them right out of the spray bottle there just to get more blobs and then adding some water. I will say the Mermaid Lagoon, I really like. The color really stays behind when you pick it up with the cloth. So I had splattered on the water. I'm going to get that water effect, but the blue of the Mermaid Lagoon like stayed like on the paper, which I really, really liked. So with this, I wanted it definitely more splattery looking because I'm thinking like, you know, bubbles and water and all that stuff. So I let that sit for about a minute and then picked up the color, and see what I mean? Like, it's just, these are fun. These are really fun. Like, when more colors are released, I will be ordering them. I've never been really big into sprays. They're just not my thing. I don't do mixed media, really. I am just a card maker. You know, I'll experiment with all the different types of coloring mediums, but I don't really do the whole mixed media thing. It's never... I love the look of it. I love seeing what other people do, but it just isn't something that comes naturally to me. But these, yeah, I will get the rest of the Oxide sprays as they're released because they're fun. They're just fun. I really had a ton of fun making a big mess. So I made my backgrounds and they're both now dry. And then this green one, I'm going to die cut with the Leafy Frames wafer die from Simon Says Stamp. This is an A2 size die. So I'm taping it over the background because the background is also A2 size. So I do not want this to move at all. This Leafy frame was released last year. And yeah, it was released last year. Mine ended up being defective and didn't cut. Simon replaced it, no problem. It was like super popular last year. They replaced it, sent me a new one, and then I literally had it sitting in a container with all the other dies I'm going to use. I've had this card planned out in my head for almost a year now. And then just in moving and all the craziness, I kind of lost track of it. And then when the Oxide sprays showed up, I was like, oh, and then the wheels start turning, and then I put 2 and 2 together, and this card just finally came together. So I also have all of these picture book wafer dies that I bought, again, last year. All the little sea creatures one. I used the octopus one in a video last year. And then all these guys were literally sitting in this container with this wafer die. Yeah. So I die cut all of the little creatures from different colors, like solid colors of cardstock. And then to intensify everything, I am blending on just some regular Distress ink. And I'm using the tiniest of the life-changing blender brushes from Picket Fence Studios. I've had people asking me, like, what would you do with that tiniest one? This is actually the second or third video I've shown. I think this is the third time I've shown using this tiny little one. It actually comes in really handy. I'll have a link at the end to it, another video I used using more picture book dies and that tiny little brush. But I'm just going along and blending on this color. I'm not doing a perfect blend. Like, I like adding that extra definition with the little bit of Distress ink. And then I just rub the brush onto my microfiber cloth in between colors. That cleans it off, no problem. And then I can go on to the next color. And just by force of habit, I'm purposely working in rainbow order. I purposely chose rainbow colors for all of these little sea creatures because I thought it would kind of be cute and they would really pop against the Oxide spray background I created. And then just, I had to work in rainbow order. I had to. So I did, you know, red, orange, yellow. Now I'm working on the green, and then I'll work on blue, and then purple. So, the little crab and the starfish were obviously the very easiest because they're pretty much just one color cardstock, done. The fish, I purposely die cut from 2 colors because I wanted to layer his little stripes there. And then the little turtle, I just die cut from the same green cardstock and then cut his shell from some Audrey Blue. But then the Audrey Blue, I sponged the Mowed Lawn ink onto it. And I've sped this up in the editing. It still didn't take that long, but because I'm doing so much, this video would be even longer than it is. So I don't blend this quickly. Again, I wish I could. But yeah. And then, of course, the little seahorse, who is the cutest little thing ever. I'm kind of kicking myself for having them sitting in that container for so long, being neglected and not used, because I'm a little bit obsessed with these picture book wafer dies and have collected the entire series of them. Like, even the ones that like these ones, even the ones that didn't get sent to me, I purchase all the other ones to have them all because I don't know what it is. It just appeals to me. They're the cutest little things. So to adhere all the little pieces and everything together, I'm using either washi tape or Simon's Craft Tacky Glue. I just kind of flip them over and tape them from behind. So, you know, the back sides of these are just horrible looking, but you're not going to see it, so it doesn't matter. And I find washi tape I used to always use just regular, you know, Scotch tape, but I'm finding washi tape is so much easier to work with. You can just tear it and stick it on and you're not going to see it, especially through thick cardstock. So this was an afterthought. After I started adhering them together, I wasn't going to do this, but especially with this turtle though, I was like, his, you know, the spots on his shell are just boring. They need something. And I didn't want to have to like die cut even more cardstock. So I just pulled out my Copic markers and just grabbed similar, like darker shades than the cardstock. And I'm just adding dots, nothing fancy, just adding blobs just to give them all a little bit more texture, a little bit more definition. So going along, adding those little dots and blobs and whatnot. And then some of them I was keeping in the scraps just to hold everything kind of in place. And then just little bits of washi tape, just taping everything together. This is the easiest. With ones like this especially that have a lot of pieces, the fish would be easier to cut out, but something like the seahorse, the crab especially, I've shown other videos where I will adhere the pieces onto copy paper and then trim them with scissors, and that's fine. But with ones like this where there's a lot of little pieces and it would take too long to cut, this is the easiest way for me to just adhere them. Or you could assemble them onto your card, but I like the freedom of having them all done on their own, and then I can move them around and they're not like glued straight down. So adding my little dots, doing my thing. The red was a little tricky. You know, like even the darkest red Copic doesn't really show up on red cardstock because red is a fun pigment sometimes. So I added a couple different reds, and it's still, as it dried into the cardstock, it's kind of disappearing. So I ended up actually taking a brown marker. This is like an E49 or something like that. I'd already put them away, but just a brown with a bit of a red tone marker to add my little dots and whatnot. Sorry, now my phone's going off. Of course it is, as soon as I get this video voiceover going. Anywho, add my little dots. And then for the eyes, you can do one of two things. You can die cut, and I've shown this, you can just die cut black cardstock, you know, a little scrap of black cardstock with those wafer dies just to get the little black dots for their eyes. That works. I didn't feel like doing that, so I have all the little dots, you know, in the color cardstock. So the easiest thing to do is I'm just adding black Copic marker. And if you're at all familiar with Copics, and you can especially see it on color cardstock, is the color just moves. So I barely even have to touch the marker to those tiny little dots of the eyes, and they're fully saturated. And the reason I did this separately and not in, you know, the eye in the die cut in the little character and then add, you know, just dab the marker, is because again, Copic marker moves because it's alcohol based. And I actually had tried this before in a previous video. I don't think I ended up having the footage though to show it. Is because it's black. If I was to say leave the eye in the fish there and dab the marker, the black Copic marker onto just the eye, it would still seep past that die cut eye area onto the actual body of the fish, and it just looks ugly. So I did it all separately. It is a little finicky. This is where the reverse tweezers, which I recommend in just about every video. Hashtag not sponsored, but I really wish they would. I could use an extra 20 of these. I have 2. I should probably order at least 2 more. I've gotten really good though. I keep them literally front and center on my desk. These reverse tweezers are amazing, especially with these tiny little eyes I struggled with. They jump. They literally jump. They kind of drove me nuts, but it was all worth it. Like once you stick them into place, it's like they're now complete. They're now little characters. Their eyes finish them off. So it was worth it. Even this crab, in my head, I was like, I'm not sure how I'm going to adhere these because, you know, there's not much space to work with. But I actually cut little tiny squares of washi tape. It wasn't too hard. Just 2 little tiny squares of washi tape, stuck them on there, and then was able to stick the eyes into place with my reverse tweezers. So that actually came together much easier than I expected it to. So now I've got all my little characters with all their little spots and definition and their eyes in place, and they just turned out so cute. It really was worth. And I had just a blast the entire time, you know, die cutting them and then sponging them and coloring them and then assembling them. And it was like, this is why I love those little characters. So for the sentiments, I actually just pulled out the Simon Says Stamp Kind Flowers stamp set that, again, this was released last year, I think, too. This was part of a card kit. Again, links. I'll have all the links. There's a massive amount of them because I used everything. So I just stamped a couple of sentiments from that set onto black cardstock. This card would technically be really great for a birthday card, but birthday cards aren't something I need. I always need tons of thank you cards. Thank you, thinking of you, friendship. Those are what I personally use the most. So that's why I do that most of the time. But also when I was making this, I'm like, this would make a really good birthday card. It would be so cute. So, but I did more of a thank you theme. So die cut those sentiments. I white heat embossed them onto black cardstock and then die cut them with the narrowest of the Simon Says stamp sentiment labels wafer dies. And then to adhere everything together, I adhered that die cut oxide spray frame to the background, and I only adhered around the outer perimeter. I left all those leafy parts with no adhesive because some of these little characters I'm going to kind of tuck in amongst the leaves slash, you know, seaweed. So kind of figured them out, and yes, place them in rainbow order. It kind of goes in rainbow in a circle because I can't not. So I adhered all of these little guys into place with more craft tacky glue and just kind of figured out how I wanted to place all of them. And then once I got all of them adhered, I'm going to adhere one of the sentiments, and I'm just going to use one of my little Derice foam strips because it's the perfect size. So I'm going to add the foam strip and then pop that sentiment strip into place. And then the second sentiment strip is meant to go on the inside of the card. And after doing all of this, like all this spraying and coloring and everything, I was just going to adhere the sentiment strip to the inside and be done. But I was like, I couldn't leave the inside that blank. So what I ended up doing was I just used some copy paper to cover the rest of the inside of the card. And then I just sprayed the 3 watercolors I used. So Wilted Violet, Mermaid Lagoon, Faded Jeans, and water. Like the colors I used to make the water on the front. Anyway, sprayed those lightly on the inside of the card. And same thing, I was like, I like how this looks on just regular cardstock too. And if you do a really light spray like this, it dries really quickly. Even I use the heat tool to speed it up, but it still dried really quickly. So adhere the sentiment now. And then I'm going to adhere this to my card front. And it's not done. It can't be done. There needs one more embellishment. I was going to go with bling, but then remembered I have these Studio Caudia clear drops, and they are perfect for this card. So I, was very liberal with these. I'm going to adhere them into place with the craft tacky glue. And the craft tacky glue, especially under the clear drops, it looks white at first, but it will dry clear. And it's funny, like as it dried clear, but it also like emphasized the drops. So they literally look wet even after everything is dry. I don't know. I can't explain it. I posted a super close up pic of it on my Instagram, and it just made my day. So that finally finishes off this card. The oxide sprays, super fun. These dyes, super fun. Everything came together kind of how I was picturing in my head, so I consider this a win. Like I mentioned many times, I'll have a video or a link in the description below to my blog post. I'll have the supply list with all the links. You can check that out if you're interested. And links in the upper right hand corner to these other videos. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.